bring you Killer Wives, episode 40. Video Vixen. These are the case facts against Marjorie Orban, who killed, then dismembered her own husband. Isn't trust a bitch? Phoenix, Arizona. Famous for celebrities Michael Phelps, Bret Michaels, but also made famous for the murder of one Mr. J. Michael Orban.
Let's go, sir. You're not
But what transpired in a marriage to make a wife want to slaughter and dismember her husband? To find this out, we must go back. Back to the day that his body was discovered. Back to the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, with temperatures ranging over 100 degrees. Back to the Sonoran Desert beyond the boundaries of a local community where western diamondback snakes call home. This is the time, the place, and date that Phoenix police officers will be summoned to a call of a torso in the desert. The torso was discovered merely by chance on October 23, 2004 by a transient living in the desert who came across a container wrapped in heavy black plastic. He decides to open the container. He sees the torso of a body. Even the most experienced police officers on the scene will be puzzled as to why someone would do this and leave it in plain sight. Detective Dave Barnes of the Phoenix PD had this to say about the torso. All of the insides, all the internal organs, intestines were missing. I thought, who could do this to a human being? Cut off his arms, his legs, his head. Whoever did this wanted this person never to be identified. An investigation will pursue through the night and into the next morning by foot, horseback, and by vehicle. Whomever placed the deceased torso at this location must have done so at least 10 days prior based on autopsy results. This timeline is commensurate with the time that Marjorie reported her husband missing. Unfortunately, police would not make this connection between the two occurrences until a DNA test on the corpse some 10 days later. DNA doesn't come like it does on television. They could solve a crime within 30 minutes or less. Marjorie Orban was in no rush to report a murder she had committed. Marjorie only reluctantly reported her husband's absence after parting from her husband's friends and family, to which she didn't act like either. To give you some context on how easy this crime would have been to solve, the torso was found less than 1.5 miles from the Orban's gated community. Less than 1.5 miles from Mr. Orban's home. You see, at this point, you might be asking, why would Marjorie place his torso so close to the house? Who would do this? It would lead right back to them, but that was not her worry. You see, I'll tell you why. Marjorie might have been a buxom bleached blonde, but she was no idiot. Marjorie knew full well that insurance benefits on dead persons will not pay out absent of a body. Now, if you have no body, it takes 7 years to collect those monies. For this reason, she must place a body within the close proximity to the house so it can be a DNA tested even without fingerprints or facial recognition. So today you don't need either, you just need good DNA. Marjorie is attempting to make this crime appear mafia-related with the sewing up of the body, the missing head and arms. And the last time Jay was ever seen alive by anyone was on September 8th, 2004, which was on Jay's 45th birthday. Happy birthday, husband. Even though Jay was a very hard-driven entrepreneur, he loved to play hard as well. Mr. Orban by profession was a jewelry and art dealer who met his wife in a strip club some years earlier as an exotic dancer. And a lot of these killer wife cases in the millions include dancers when the guy is rich. But Marjorie was no ordinary stripper, limited to pleasing men with her clothes off. No. Marjorie at one time was considered so hot that she was given a dancing appearance in the Motley Crue video, Girls, Girls, Girls. Now this was filmed in the strip club where she worked. She was featured alongside of the owner of that strip club in the former television show, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. So it tells you that even the strip club owner, who one time liked Marjorie, was a multimillionaire. And Marjorie chased these type men. Marjorie Orman, the former Vegas showgirl, was no stranger to the institution of marriage. Marjorie had been married 6 times by the age of 34 when she wed Jay Orban. For the next decade, Marjorie appeared to live in a domestic bliss, having a son named Noah and remodeling her North Phoenix home.
You're watching M&N, the Men's Channel.
But secretly, Marjorie was habitually unfaithful to her husband, who traveled nearly half the year for his job. In the summer of 2004, she had 2 affairs, one with Noah's 18-year-old karate instructor, the other with a 60-year-old bodybuilder she met at the gym. So she was into casual sex with casual strangers. This behavior is reflected in most killer wives cases where the wealthy wives go after men of lesser means, while the women of lesser means chase after wealthy men for extramarital affairs. Weird, right? All of this secrecy came to a crashing end in September of 2004 when Jay returned home to Phoenix from a long road trip to Florida, but it was unexpected by his wife. Now he shortened that journey because of a torrential downpour coming from Hurricane Francis ahead of his travels. Back then, Hurricane Francis was tearing up Florida. That night, as he drove back to Phoenix, he called his mother as he normally did each night. She loved to talk to him. During their phone conversation, she expressed her concerns about him being in the path of the hurricane, reassured her that he was not only safe, but he was returning home to Phoenix. In fact, he was a very short miles from arriving in Phoenix, and he was going to talk to her later. During a subsequent investigation of Jay's disappearance, detectives would note that Jay arrived home for sure, because they knew this because his cell phone pinged at that residence, and he used his credit cards near the house prior to getting back. These facts were incontrovertible, and contrary to what his wife said, that he came home and left out again for another business trip. This from his wife, that he came home and then left out for another business trip. If Jay had left home, wouldn't he take his cell phone with him? A cell phone, mind you, that had stopped transmitting at the location that night of his disappearance, never to be used again. A few days would pass, and Jay was nowhere to be found. Not only was Jay's mom worried about him, but so was the rest of his family, except for Marjorie. Kind of interesting that a wife who draws all of her income, wealth, and home is not interested in a man that provides these items. Marjorie would finally call the police to explain that her husband was missing. Detective Jan Butcher, who was in charge of the case, shared just how uncooperative Marjorie was when she described Marjorie as a woman who wouldn't bother to answer calls or to even bother to call her back. It basically felt like she couldn't have cared less about her missing husband, she said. Now, Jay's own mother claimed that her phone call with Jay prior to him going missing contradicted Marjorie's statements, as Jay told her that he was planning to celebrate his birthday at his home and had promised to call her back later that night. Now, before Jay even went on his business trip, he celebrated his son's his birthday party just a few days earlier, so he was a family man. As investigators dug deep into Marjorie's habits, they noticed that days after the disappearance, Marjorie kept liquidating her husband's assets and running up his credit cards, even though she was not authorized to use those cards. She had never used his credit cards before. In fact, why are his credit cards not with Jay? At the home they shared, she had removed every photo of him from the home. She had thrown out all his clothing and allowed her current boyfriend to place his clothing there instead. And all of this occurred while Jay's 8-year-old son was worried about his father's absence and feared that his father had merely abandoned the family. So, not only do you lie to police, but she's lying to her 8-year-old son about the father, his own father. Detective Butcher couldn't help but be highly suspicious of Jay's wife. While her husband was missing, she was out spending his money and in crazy amounts. She spent $12,000 on a baby grand piano, after which she withdrew $45,000 from one of his business accounts. A business account, mind you, that she had never touched before. She would begin to forge his name on business checks, although she'd never had access to his business account and checkbook. She would later claim, now listen to this, that she had done it because she was in shock. But then, when Butcher asked if she would take a polygraph test over the phone, she heard a man's voice in the background. A man who was not Jay. A man who said, "You tell her to go fuck herself." Now that ignited something in the detective. Who was this man in the house? If it's not Jay, who was this man in such a short time after his death? This would push Detective Butcher to request a warrant to search Jay and Marjorie's home. And on the night they went into the home with the SWAT team, Marjorie's lover, a man named Larry Weisberg, who happened to be one of the managers from Marjorie's gym, was there, her lover. Upon searching the home, detectives in support with the SWAT members would find many of Jay's belongings that he would have never left home without. Now she is in trouble as a wife. Things they found in the search were like a bunch of credit cards, as well as one of his business checkbooks. The main checkbook where checks were missing, a 3-pronged checkbook that were cashed by her. The SWAT team, upon entering the home, had to tase and take under arrest Marjorie's lover because he had aggressed against them in a football stance as if he was gonna fight him. SWAT ultimately subdued him and bloodied his face as seen in this photo. Detectives knew then and there, based on their findings, that Marjorie was lying about Jay heading straight to another business trip. He had come home, unlike what she had said. But where was he now? And here is black and white, grainy footage of the actual police investigation as they took her into custody.
We get a call out there that there's a credit card in your husband's name, and your husband is missing. Tell me what the story is. Because apparently you've been using the credit cards with no problem, right?
I always have. My husband is missing, and he is not here generating income. He ran the business, and I helped him.
So for 7 years, you have this account.
It has his name on it.
His name on it. And your name?
It says J period M period Orban.
Okay.
And the debit card. And I just used the debit card. And
for 7 years?
And,
Okay.
Am I getting myself in big trouble saying that
I don't see it. If you got it in 2 people's names, I have one with my daughter's name on it. No, it says J period M, so that means...
No, J Michael Orban.
Oh, okay.
It was his account.
I thought it was like J/M.
No, it was his account that he had me using.
And he knew about it, of course. And he was putting the money in it.
Yes, every week.
Okay. You've used this in the past, this credit card, because I saw the Circuit City said you bought stuff with no problem.
I don't know why they are saying they've closed Jay's accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's in Jay's name. Because nothing can be in my name. Because if anything's in my name, the IRS is a problem.
It's going to attach it.
So I put myself at risk, of not being able to accumulate, community property, accumulated status or rights or whatever. And I didn't care because I knew Jay would never, do anything against me or anything. But I guess it says it showed up that he's deceased. I know Detective Barnes has been working on this missing persons thing, and I'm really upset with him because he brought us in to tell us the things that they found. My husband. I'm sorry, he's my husband in my mind. And They told his parents that I'm pretty sure it's him. His parents are in their 70s and just completely distraught and completely, I mean, they're older physically than their age. They're not well, and again, it's through hell and they're distraught, and he told them that he's 100% sure that it's me before the DNA, before the test. I think that's just very irresponsible, because his mother's just going to die.
What do you think?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Don't know. At first, I thought he'd just come walking through the door any minute. I don't know. I know I had to tell my son that when he says, did Daddy forget about us? Yeah, 8-year-old had to ask that. His father forgot about us. I'm not supposed to be talking about this matter. But, I had to tell him in the morning, and I am sure that something terrible has happened. I don't know what. Daddy might have had an accident, or some bad guys might have robbed him, or something bad must have happened, because he would not call you. Whatever I have to face for the mistake that I made of using that card, I will face it.
Well, you know what? The card
if I could
the
just
card
come home
is
with my son.
the part about J2. I mean, do you know anywhere we can start? Do you have any idea where we can start finding him and look for him?
How can I know?
What
I want him back here.
What makes you so
more than anyone in this world? I'm just afraid of something I say being misconstrued or taken out of context or read in a way that it might not be fact. I mean, I have been told, well, you bought this, so you bought this, so you must think that you must have, so that meant that you thought that Jay wasn't coming back? Like, no, that's not what it meant. I bought it, that's what it meant. I bought it, that's all.
When was the last time you saw Jay?
See, this is the thing that I really am terrified of sitting here and answering questions. I want to answer any question that you want answered. I will tell you the truth. I will, as best as I know it, I will tell you anything you want to know. But I have a little boy out there that may have lost his father. And I'm terrified of him losing his mother. And I don't want to say anything that may be taken out of context. May we resume this conversation during the day when my son is in school with the attorney present, just to help me, just not to stop it. I will talk to you, but just to help make sure that I don't make an error. And I don't mean cover my behind and hide a lie. I don't mean protect anyone else. I don't mean that at all. I just mean I have to, given what I have at stake, my life, if I'm blamed for this, I have a little boy out there that needs me. He needs his father too.
But what would Marjorie's motive for killing her husband be? Police assume from insurance policies that Marjorie stood to inherit almost $1 million from various life insurance claims. Because of this, police believe that the slaying was financially motivated. The police also discovered that Marjorie was having affairs with numerous people, including the man they found on the property, Larry Weisberg, which started months before the murder. So, typically in these cases when police look for a murder, they start at home. If there's finances to gain, they start with the wife. If she's having an affair, it definitely starts with the wife. Marjorie's actions, her apparent unwillingness to help detectives in the case, and her seemingly unconcerned behavior made her a major suspect in the eyes of detectives. When the police first made their arrest, it would be on the basis of credit card fraud, since she used his credit cards and signed his name. And remember, they were his credit cards, not hers. But eventually they would gather enough evidence to arrest her for Jay's murder, and that's exactly what occurred.
You're watching MNN, the Men's Channel.
You see, Marjorie might have gotten away with murder. She got away with murder so far, but she was very sloppy with the details. Prior to killing Jay, Marjorie went to her local Home Depot to buy what I refer to as a murder kit. Marjorie purchased 2 Rubbermaid containers. One of those containers would be used for Jay's torso, and the other for his body parts she would cut away. So, put one in the torso, and for the arms, the legs, and the head will go into the other one. She would purchase acid to clean the concrete after the murder, along with a gloss floor sealant to cover the floor to prevent any blood or DNA evidence from being discovered at the scene. You cannot get blood after an acid wash or a complete sealant. But here's where Marjorie slipped. Not only did detectives have footage of her shopping at the Home Depot, where the murder kit was purchased, but police found a receipt from her purchase, and detectives, now mind you, knew that she had cleaned up her garage. Why? It looked spotless. Those cleaning supplies on the list that she had painted also in the interior, including the garage door, which they believe happened in the garage. So they believe the murder occurred in the garage, and she did everything in the world to clean it up and paint it over. A new wrinkle in the case emerges. While awaiting trial, Marjorie would share that she knew who had killed her husband, but refused to name the person, claiming, mind you, that the killer said, "If you tell the police I committed this crime, I will kill your son." So I warn you, in a lot of these killer wives cases, the wife will always claim that somebody was threatening her or her children, and that's why she didn't tell the truth. But the truth actually was that she killed him. Marjorie will eventually go to trial, which would last 8 months. One of the most damning testimonies against her was from her former prison cellmate, who shared that Marjorie had admitted that she did it. She even told her that Jay had been shot, put in a freezer, defrosted, and then cut up. Now, all these accusations Marjorie would claim to be lies against her, but her cellmate knew nothing of these facts in advance. Even the man whom she was cheating on Jay with, Larry Weisberg, would testify against her. Weisberg, with a heel face now, would claim that he had no knowledge about Marjorie's plan to kill her husband, nor did he have anything to do with that particular crime. So when you go down, people are not going down with you. Despite some evidence against Larry having access to Jay and Marjorie's home, as he had remote control to the garage door that she gave him, as well as having his belongings in their closet, detectives did not believe that he had anything to do with the murder, which he did not. She was going to use him as a patsy and from a guy to live off of. Now, detectives believed that it was Marjorie who had managed to shoot him, kill him, cut him up, and leave his body in a Rubbermaid container in the middle of an empty lot to be discovered. The only person who came to Marjorie's aid was her ex-lover in the past from the strip club, Michael J. Peters, the millionaire who owned the strip clubs. But it would seem that even his words could not sway the jury. Marjorie also shared how she was advised by her lawyers to not take the stand, which was lucky for her. You really can't win in these cases. Something that Marjorie believes was a huge mistake, but I do not. Now, the prosecution would go on to give their entire portrayal of Marjorie's life. They painted her as a money-hungry stripper who worked at the Dollhouse and other clubs among that, and that she was just in marriage for money and using Jay to have a child. Unfortunately for Marjorie, there was so much evidence presented against her that her lawyers even asked her if she would be willing to take a plea deal. But Marjorie said, "I will never let my son hear me say that I did this to his father. I'll let them kill me first." Very poetic words. But poetry does not cover you in a case of murder. She should have taken a plea deal. She could have avoided a very lengthy sentence. Now, Marjorie's lawyers supposedly felt confident that the prosecution was not able to prove that she had killed Jay beyond a reasonable doubt. But when the verdict was finally read out loud to the entire court, she was found guilty of first-degree murder of her husband and given a life sentence. She should have took the plea deal. Court documents in this case indicate that these facts moved the jury to their final decision, that detectives searched Jay's art dealership. There, they found an open package of jigsaw blades with 2 of them missing. Now, she used this for the saw, the electric saw, to chop them up. Now, the remaining blades were consistent with the cuts on Jay's body. The prosecution believed that Marjorie shot Jay after he returned from his business trip in the garage and then proceeded to freeze his body before cutting it up with that particular jigsaw blade. Detectives used credit card records that belonged to Jay to track down the store video that showed Marjorie Orban using her husband's credit cards to buy a roll of black plastic bags and 2 50-gallon containers. Now, all murderers proceed with black plastic. They want to lay it down, that way you won't get any blood splatters anywhere. One of the containers turned out to be the same container that Jay was found in, down to the color and the UPC code that matched the receipt. So this woman forgot to peel the plastic UPC code off the container when it was scanned that matched the receipt. The police were contacted by a close friend of Marjorie's who claimed that Marjorie had previously threatened to shoot her husband in the head. She had also said that she would wrap his dead body in a blanket and put him in the desert where nobody would find him. Now, when you want to make these statements, don't make damning statements to your friends. At her trial, Marjorie pleaded not guilty and alleged that Larry Weisberg, her lover, was the one who murdered Jay Orban. She claimed that Larry killed Jay and then threatened her with that her son would be killed if she told anything. But this was all a ruse, all a lie, just to cover what she had done. Now, Larry worked up an immunity deal with the state and testified at Marjorie's trial where he said that he had nothing to do with the murder. And as I told you before, the police said he had nothing also. But on October 1, 2009, Marjorie was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. The rest of Jay's body has not been found even to this date. For Killer Wise, this is Charles Rivers. Thank you for joining us.